From the moment two people's eyes meet, an invisible psychological process begins. Within a fraction of a second, before words are spoken or gestures exchanged, judgments are silently formed. Scientists have found that the human brain can create an impression of someone in as little as 1/10 of a second, an instant so brief it seems almost impossible that such a rapid evaluation could hold any weight. Yet these snap judgments are surprisingly powerful and persistent. They influence whom we trust, whom we like, and even whom we decide to follow or avoid. The psychology of first impressions reveals a fascinating interplay between perception, bias, and intuition, a mental dance between instinct and reason that shapes nearly every human encounter. The reason first impressions occur so quickly lies deep in the brain's evolutionary history. In the distant past, rapid assessments of others were essential for survival. When early humans encountered strangers, they needed to know instantly whether that person posed a threat or offered safety. A delay in judgment could mean the difference between life and death. As a result, the human brain evolved a specialized system to evaluate faces almost instantly. The amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure involved in emotion and threat detection, plays a crucial role. It processes facial cues such as anger, fear, or friendliness with incredible speed, often before the conscious mind is even aware. This primal mechanism still operates today, even though the threats we face are rarely physical. Instead, our judgments manifest socially. We assess competence, trustworthiness, attractiveness, and confidence in the blink of an eye. When we meet someone new, the first thing our mind latches onto is appearance. Physical cues, facial symmetry, posture, clothing, grooming, and body language become the raw material from which the brain constructs meaning. Studies show that people attribute positive traits like intelligence, kindness, and reliability to those they perceive as physically attractive. This is known as the halo effect, a cognitive bias where one positive trait influences how we see all other aspects of a person. Conversely, if someone appears disheveled or unkempt, we might unconsciously assume they are lazy or careless. None of these assumptions are necessarily accurate, but they form the basis of our first impressions and often linger long after we learn more about the person. Facial expressions, too, play a central role in these judgments. A warm smile can instantly signal openness and friendliness, while a furrowed brow or tight-lipped expression may suggest defensiveness or hostility. Even subtle changes in the eyes, such as direct gaze or avoidance, can dramatically alter how a person is perceived. Eye contact, for instance, tends to be associated with confidence and honesty. People who meet others' eyes are often judged as more trustworthy. However, too much eye contact can feel intimidating or aggressive, showing that these signals depend heavily on context. Our brains are wired to read these cues automatically, pulling from millions of years of social evolution to interpret intent and emotion. Beyond facial and physical cues, nonverbal communication extends into posture, gestures, and spatial behavior. Someone standing tall with relaxed shoulders often gives off an air of confidence, while slouched or closed body language can imply insecurity or discomfort. How a person uses space also affects perception. Someone who invades personal space too quickly might be perceived as overbearing, while keeping an appropriate distance demonstrates respect. Even the speed and tone of one's voice can color a first impression. A calm, steady voice tends to evoke authority and composure, whereas rushed or high-pitched speech may signal anxiety or uncertainty. Yet for all their speed and instinctual basis, first impressions are not purely about visual or behavioral cues. They are also deeply influenced by psychological biases that shape how we interpret what we see. One powerful example is the confirmation bias, the tendency to seek evidence that supports our initial beliefs. If we meet someone and instinctively judge them as friendly, we are likely to notice behaviors that confirm that view, while ignoring those that contradict it. This makes first impressions extraordinarily sticky. Even when presented with new information that challenges our initial assessment, we unconsciously filter it through the lens of our early judgment. This cognitive inertia is why people often say you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Once formed, that mental snapshot becomes the default reference point.
Another layer of complexity arises from cultural conditioning. The traits people value and judge differ across societies. In some cultures, maintaining direct eye contact is a sign of confidence and respect. In others, it may be viewed as impolite or confrontational. Similarly, gestures, dress codes, and personal space norms vary widely. A friendly gesture in one culture could be offensive in another. Thus, while the instinct to form quick impressions is universal, the content of those impressions is often culturally learned. Our brains rely not only on biology, but also on social programming to interpret others' behavior. Interestingly, the process of making a first impression works both ways. Just as we form opinions about others, we also send out countless cues that others use to judge us. This self-awareness often leads people to modify their behavior during first encounters. They might choose their clothing carefully, practice confident posture, or rehearse a friendly smile, all strategies aimed at controlling how they are perceived. Psychologists refer to this as impression management. It is not necessarily about deception, but about self-presentation, aligning the image we project with the impression we want to create. In job interviews, first dates, or social introductions, people consciously engage this skill to influence others' perceptions. Even subtle choices, like mirroring someone's body language or tone, can increase rapport and likability. The fascinating part is how little time people have to manage this process. Research suggests that within just 100 milliseconds, people can make surprisingly accurate judgments about traits like attractiveness, competence, and trustworthiness based solely on facial appearance. These lightning-fast evaluations often correlate closely with impressions formed after longer exposure. This suggests that the brain's first instinct is not random. Rather, it relies on pattern recognition. Over time, our experiences teach us what certain expressions or behaviors mean, and the brain builds a vast library of associations. When it encounters a new face, it instantly compares it to stored patterns and generates a prediction. This automatic categorization happens beneath conscious awareness, creating an intuitive sense of knowing someone before they speak. However, while these rapid judgments can sometimes be accurate, they are also vulnerable to bias and stereotype. Humans have an inherent tendency to categorize others based on visible traits, such as age, gender, ethnicity, and dress. These quick categorizations activate learned stereotypes that color perception. For instance, someone dressed formally may be judged as more competent, while someone in casual attire might be seen as less serious, even if their abilities are identical. Similarly, social stereotypes can influence how warmth, dominance, or intelligence are perceived. These biases are not always malicious, but are byproducts of the brain's effort to process information efficiently. Unfortunately, they can lead to unfair treatment, discrimination, or miscommunication when left unchecked. The impact of first impressions extends beyond social interactions into professional and personal outcomes. In the workplace, employers often form opinions about candidates within the first few seconds of an interview. A confident handshake, eye contact, and posture can weigh as heavily as a resume. Likewise, in dating, people often decide within moments whether they feel attracted to someone long before any meaningful conversation takes place. These rapid judgments can determine opportunities, relationships, and reputations. In a digital age, this process has become even more pronounced. Social media profiles, photos, and brief videos serve as substitutes for in-person first impressions. The human brain applies the same snap judgment process to pixels on a screen as it does to faces in real life, deciding in seconds who seems likable, trustworthy, or authentic. Interestingly, first impressions are not just formed externally, they also affect internal behavior. Once we form an impression of someone, it subtly changes how we interact with them. If we perceive someone as friendly, we may behave warmly, which in turn encourages them to reciprocate. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where our initial belief shapes reality. On the other hand, if we expect someone to be rude or unkind, we might unconsciously behave more defensively, provoking the very response we feared. This psychological loop demonstrates how powerful and self-reinforcing first impressions can be. Despite their strength, first impressions can evolve over time, especially with repeated interactions. When people get to know each other better, new experiences can either reinforce or challenge those initial judgments. However, it often takes consistent evidence to override a strong first impression. This is why people who make poor first impressions sometimes struggle to change others' opinions, even when their later behavior contradicts the initial perception. The human brain prefers consistency and resists rewriting its early assessments, as doing so requires cognitive effort and emotional flexibility. From a psychological perspective, this bias toward initial impressions serves a purpose. The brain values efficiency and predictability. Forming an impression quickly helps conserve mental energy in a complex social world. It allows us to navigate interactions smoothly without constantly reevaluating everyone we meet. The downside, of course, is that this efficiency can lead to oversimplified or inaccurate conclusions. The challenge, therefore, lies in balancing intuition with reflection, trusting our gut while remaining open to revision. People who are skilled at social perception often have a heightened awareness of these dynamics. They know how to read subtle cues and adapt accordingly. Emotional intelligence plays a major role here. Individuals high in emotional intelligence can not only manage the impressions they create, but also understand and interpret the impressions they receive. They are sensitive to context, capable of adjusting their behavior based on social feedback, and aware of how biases influence perception. This awareness helps them navigate first encounters more effectively and build stronger, more authentic relationships. At a deeper level, the psychology of first impressions also raises philosophical questions about authenticity. If people consciously tailor their behavior to create certain impressions, are they being genuine? The answer is complex. All human interaction involves some level of self-presentation. We shift our tone when speaking to a teacher, a friend, or a stranger. These adjustments do not necessarily mean deception. They reflect social adaptability. The key difference lies in intention. When impression management aligns with our true character, it enhances communication. When it diverges too far from reality, it can create dissonance and mistrust.
Another intriguing aspect is how first impressions operate in reverse. How people form impressions of us even when we are unaware. For example, subtle cues like micro-expressions, fleeting emotional reactions that last only fractions of a second, can betray true feelings despite conscious attempts to mask them. Someone skilled in reading these cues might pick up on tension, insecurity, or enthusiasm that the other person did not intend to reveal. Similarly, voice tone, pacing, and even scent can influence how we are perceived on an unconscious level. Humans constantly broadcast information through multiple channels, and others are perpetually decoding it. In modern society, where much interaction occurs virtually, understanding first impressions has become even more vital. On social media, a single image or video clip may define someone's entire public persona. Online dating profiles, professional networking sites, and virtual interviews compress the process of impression formation into seconds. People judge based on photographs, bios, and tone of text, often without realizing the extent of their bias. In such contexts, visual storytelling and self-branding become forms of impression management. The same psychological principles that governed face-to-face encounters in prehistory now dictate success in digital communication. Yet, for all its flaws, the process of forming first impressions serves an important psychological function. It helps people make sense of the social world. Without this ability, every encounter would require exhaustive analysis, leaving individuals overwhelmed. Snap judgments, though imperfect, offer a framework for navigating human complexity. They are a form of mental shorthand, a way for the brain to make fast predictions about others' intentions and behaviors. The key is to remain aware of their limitations. Recognizing that first impressions are quick, biased, and subject to change allows us to engage others with greater empathy and curiosity. Changing a negative first impression requires conscious effort and consistency. Demonstrating reliability, kindness, or competence over time can gradually reshape perception. Small, genuine gestures, keeping promises, showing respect, and maintaining open communication accumulate evidence that challenges early assumptions. This process, while slow, underscores the human capacity for flexibility and forgiveness. It shows that while people judge quickly, they also have the ability to revise their judgments with experience. In the end, first impressions are both a gift and a trap. They allow humans to connect instantly, to sense potential allies or threats, to navigate social landscapes efficiently. But they also imprison perception within narrow frames, blinding us to the complexity of others. Understanding the psychology behind them empowers us to use that mechanism wisely, to recognize our biases, to present ourselves authentically, and to look beyond the surface when evaluating others. Every encounter becomes an opportunity to test and refine our instincts. The notion that people judge one another in just 0.1 seconds may seem unsettling, but it also highlights the remarkable power of the human mind. Our brains are pattern recognition machines, capable of processing vast amounts of social information in the blink of an eye. That same ability that once kept our ancestors alive now shapes our friendships, careers, and relationships. The challenge for modern humans is not to eliminate first impressions, but to master them, to understand how they work, to guard against their distortions, and to remain open to the deeper truth that time and experience reveal. Ultimately, every face we encounter is like a story waiting to be read. The first page may be written in a flash, but the rest unfolds with patience, curiosity, and empathy. By learning the psychology of first impressions, we gain not only insight into others, but also a mirror into ourselves, how we see, how we judge, and how we choose to connect. In that awareness lies the true art of human understanding, the delicate balance between intuition and openness that defines every meaningful relationship we form.